Every theater has a ghost story. At least that is what theater people say. A woman in green crossing a Broadway stage, a dark figure in the balcony still judging the show, and at America's oldest theater, a stagehand who asked for his skull to keep performing after death. These are not haunted houses. They are not abandoned hospitals. They are theaters, places built for illusion, places where people spend their lives pretending to die, fall in love, disappear, return, and speak to the dead. And in many theaters, after the audience leaves and the building goes dark, one light is left burning on stage, a single bulb, a ghost light. Officially, it is there for safety, but theater people are theater people. So of course, there is another explanation. Some say the ghost light keeps spirits away. Some say it gives ghosts a chance to perform after the living have gone home. And some say it is there because a theater is never completely empty. Today on Stick Theater History, haunted theaters across America. New Amsterdam Theater. Next, we go to New York City, to 42nd Street, to the New Amsterdam Theater. The New Amsterdam opened in 1903 and became one of Broadway's great palaces of glamour. It was home to the Ziegfeld Follies, where beauty, spectacle, comedy, music, and fantasy came together under one roof. This was Broadway as dream machine. Feathers, footlights, showgirls, staircases, silk, sequins, applause. The New Amsterdam was not just a theater, it was a fantasy factory, and one of the women connected to that world was Olive Thomas. Olive Thomas was a Ziegfeld Follies performer and later a silent film actress. She was young, famous, and part of that glittering early 20th century theater world. Then, in 1920, she died suddenly in Paris from mercury poisoning. Her death was tragic, mysterious, and exactly the kind of story that theater history never fully lets go. And according to New Amsterdam theater lore, Olive Thomas came back. Her ghost is said to haunt the theater she once knew. Some accounts describe her as wearing a green beaded dress. Some say she carries, or is connected to, a blue bottle. One famous story says a guard saw a woman in green cross the stage, turn, blow him a kiss, and disappear through a wall. Stagehands and theater workers have reportedly kept up the tradition of saying, "Good night, Olive." That detail is what makes the story feel so theatrical. Not "get out," not "leave us alone." "Good night, Olive," as if she is part of the company, as if she belongs to the building, as if every night before the theater can sleep, someone has to acknowledge the ghost in the room. Olive's story is not just spooky because someone might have seen a figure on stage. It is spooky because it belongs to Broadway's favorite myth, the performer who never really leaves. The show ends, the curtain falls, the audience goes home, but somewhere in the building, glamour lingers. A green dress, a blue bottle, a kiss from the stage, and one last good night. The Belasco Theater, New York City. If the New Amsterdam has the ghost of a performer, the Belasco Theater is said to have the ghost of a man who built the theater around himself. David Belasco was a producer, playwright, and director. He was one of the most powerful theater figures of his era. In 1907, he opened the theater that would eventually carry his name. And he did not just work there, he lived there. Above the theater, Belasco had a private apartment, not just a simple office. A dramatic, Gothic-style space filled with theatrical objects, atmosphere, and personality. The apartment became part of the Belasco legend. Belasco cultivated a theatrical image for himself. He was known for wearing a cassock and clerical-style collar, which helped feed his nickname, the Bishop of Broadway. Depending on who tells the story, that look made him seem powerful, mysterious, holy, theatrical, or all of those things at once. And that is exactly the kind of image that turns a man into a ghost story before he is even dead. Belasco died in 1931, but according to theater lore, he did not leave the building. People claim to see him in the balcony, or in a box seat. Some accounts describe a man in dark clothing with a clerical collar. There are stories of footsteps, strange sounds, doors moving, curtains shifting, and elevator sounds from a private elevator that should not have been in use. Some Broadway lore even says Belasco could watch the stage from above through a hidden viewing window from his apartment. That detail is difficult to separate from legend, but as a ghost story, it is perfect. The producer above the theater, watching the stage, still observing, still judging, still waiting to see if the show is good enough. Backstage stories about the Belasco do not stop with David Belasco himself. People who have worked inside the building have described the kind of odd, hard-to-prove experiences that keep theater ghost stories alive. Shadows moving where no one is supposed to be. Strange activity in the morning before the audience arrives. Cleaners and stage door staff trading stories about unexplained sounds or movement in the house. One backstage story involves an usher checking the women's restroom after a performance. According to the story, the usher saw shoes beneath one of the stall doors and waited outside for the person to come out, but no one came out. When the usher went back inside to check, the stall was empty. Other workers have mentioned toilets flushing on their own in that same restroom. Of course, automatic toilets can have faulty sensors. That is the practical explanation, and that is exactly what makes theater ghost stories so slippery. There is almost always a logical answer: a pipe, a sensor, a draft, and old building settling. But when it happens after a show in an old Broadway theater with the house empty and the lights low, it becomes part of the building's legend. The Belasco ghost story is almost too perfect. A powerful theater man builds a theater, lives above it, fills it with his taste, his ambition, and his ego, dies, and then, according to legend, keeps watching. Some theater legends even say that if Belasco's ghost appears on opening night, it is a good sign, as if the old producer is still reviewing the show, still choosing favorites, still deciding whether the performance deserves his blessing. And honestly, that may be the most Broadway haunting imaginable. Not a ghost trying to scare you, a ghost trying to give notes. Walnut Street Theater. Our last theater brings us back to Philadelphia, to the Walnut Street Theater. The Walnut opened in 1808 and is widely known as the oldest theater in America. That alone would be enough to make it feel haunted. More than 200 years of audiences, more than 200 years of performers, more than 200 years of scenery, costumes, applause, failure, laughter, and footsteps. The Walnut has seen American theater change around it. In the 19th century, the theater was connected to one of the most famous acting families in the country. Edwin Booth, one of the great Shakespearean actors of his era, purchased the Walnut in 1863. And yes, that Booth family, Edwin Booth, was the brother of John Wilkes Booth, the actor who would assassinate President Abraham Lincoln 2 years later. So before we even get to ghost stories, the Walnut is already sitting at the intersection of American theater history and American tragedy. But one of the strangest stories connected to the Walnut is not exactly a ghost story. It is a skull story, a real one. The story involves John Pop Reed, a longtime theater worker at the Walnut. The Walnut describes Reed as a stagehand who worked there for more than 50 years in the first half of the 1800s. Other accounts describe him more specifically as a gaslighter, which means Pop Reed was not just around the theater. He helped make the stage visible. He helped bring the world of the play out of darkness. And according to the Walnut's own history, Reed left a very unusual request in his will. He wanted his skull to be separated from his body, prepared, and used on stage as Yorick's skull in productions of Hamlet, and apparently his wish was granted. To be very clear, this is not a suggestion. The Walnut Street Theater is not accepting body parts. Pop Reed was the exception, not the policy. But as theater history goes, it is hard to imagine anything more theatrical. Not a monument, not a portrait, not a plaque, a prop. Imagine working in a theater for most of your life and deciding that, after you die, part of you should still make an entrance. In Hamlet, Prince Hamlet holds the skull of Yorick and speaks to mortality, memory, and the body left behind. At the Walnut, that moment may have been performed with the actual skull of a man who spent his life inside the theater. That is not just spooky. That is deeply theatrical. The Walnut's ghost lore includes backstage spirits and stories of a presence in the building. But Pop Reed's skull gives the theater something even stranger than a haunting. A documented reminder that theater people sometimes love the building so much they do not want to leave it, not even after death. And if any theater in America should have a ghost stagehand, it would be the oldest one. Someone still checking the stage, still protecting the show, still making sure the curtain can rise. And with the Booth family in the building's history, the Walnut also reminds us that theater history does not always stay inside the theater. Sometimes a name from the stage follows us into American history. Sometimes an actor becomes part of something much larger than a performance. And sometimes the darkest theater story is still waiting in the wings. So why do so many theaters have ghost stories? Part of it is simple. Theaters are old. They creak, they settle, they echo. They have complicated electrical systems, strange acoustics, hidden rooms, and a lot of dark corners. A skeptic can explain many theater hauntings without mentioning ghosts at all, but that is only part of the answer, because theaters are not ordinary buildings. They are buildings designed to make us believe things that are not there. They turn light into moonlight, smoke into mystery, curtains into walls, painted wood into palaces, actors into kings, ghosts, lovers, murderers, and the dead. Every night, theaters ask us to sit in the dark and agree to be haunted by a story, a song, a memory, by someone pretending to be someone else. And when the performance is over, all that emotional machinery is still there. The seats are still facing the stage. The dressing room mirrors are still reflecting empty chairs. The costume racks still look like bodies in the dark. The curtains still hide what is behind them. The balcony still feels occupied. The stage still waits. That may be why theater ghost stories last, because even if the ghost is only a legend, the feeling is real. The feeling that something happened here, that someone gave everything here, that someone loved this place so much or lost so much in it that the building remembered. Maybe haunted theaters are not just about fear. Maybe they are about attachment. At the New Amsterdam, a performer is remembered in a green dress. At the Belasco, a producer may still be watching from the house. At the Walnut, a stagehand tried to remain part of the show. Different theaters, different ghosts, but the same idea. The show ends, and something stays behind. And at the end of the night, when the doors are locked and the house is dark, one light remains. The ghost light. Maybe it is there for safety. Maybe it is there for superstition. Maybe it is there for the ghosts. Or maybe it is there because theaters, more than almost any other building, never feel completely empty. This has been Stick Theater History, where tiny drawings tell big theater stories. If you like strange, dark, forgotten, or haunted moments from theater history, subscribe for more stories from behind the curtain. Next time, we follow the shadow of one of the most infamous nights in American theater. A comedy is playing, the president is watching, and an actor is waiting in the dark.